So I tend to approach energy with four goals, and one of the primary ones is affordability. Reliability is always non-negotiable. That's critical. And to the extent our policies can make them both abundant and clean, those are things that are incredibly important to my constituents. And we've heard a lot about cost today, and I know you and I talked a lot about affordability when you visited me in my office. And so I pulled up the latest cost data for wholesale generation costs in cents per kilowatt hour from Lazard. Would you consider Lazard data to be fairly reliable? I mean,
well, Lazard is senators.
They were the easiest to pull up, but
they're the most famous for publishing statistics on levelized cost of energy.
No subsidies involved, levelized.
Levelized misses the boat on electricity generation because it treats it like, would you take an Uber that was 10% cheaper in cost if you didn't know when the Uber was going to show up and where it was going to drop you off?
So one of the reasons why I raise this is because in New Mexico, I think we have been able to do both of those things at the same time. So we've pursued both affordability, actually I should say all three things, affordability, reliability, but also clean. And I know in 2023, there was a statement that you made that said, wind and solar energy will, quote, likely never leave single digits, I guess as a percent of total energy. And I know you understand the difference between the grid and transportation and heat energy that we use in our total energy balance. But when it comes to the grid in New Mexico, in just my utility, which we talked a little bit about in my office, they now produce 58% of their generation from carbon-free renewables and nuclear being the smallest of that at about 7%, wind and solar being 35%, and wind being 15% of their kilowatt hours. So that means that when you combine that with storage resources, which are primarily getting charged by clean excess renewables, that their penetration rates are now, well into the 60s, even the low 70s. How do, when Chris Wright says these resources will likely never leave single digits, it's one thing, but if the Secretary of Energy says that, I think people will get a different impression. So how do you square those two very different data sets?
Thank you, Senator. And I appreciate the question. I appreciate our shared interest in affordable, reliable, secure energy, and I think New Mexico's done some great things there. Globally, which is what I talk about mostly in that report, in 2023, the last year we have full data, wind, solar, and batteries were 2.6% of global primary energy. In the U.S., they're a little more than 3%, but not wildly higher than the global. Electricity only delivers 20% of global primary energy. So getting to 50% in electricity, which would be an incredibly high penetration, that would be double digits. But where most of the energy is consumed in the world today, and where it's growing the fastest, is in South Asia, Southeast Asia, Northern Africa, and through mostly South Asia and Southeast Asia. These are countries with very poor wind resources and actually not very good solar resources. India's got some dry places and some deserts and good resources, but Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, if you go to the places where energy growth is rising the fastest, they don't have great energy, they don't have great wind and solar resources.
That was the context of your statement.
Global energy.
Because I want to make sure that we understand, what we as a country are accomplishing. And if you just look back at the last year's worth of data, the first 11 months of 2024, and you look at new generation, the vast majority of that, and I don't have the figure in front of me, but it came out in the last couple of weeks, the vast, vast majority of that is all clean energy. And so if we can take some of these lessons from what we've been able to accomplish as a world leader in energy, and use them to help people in the world have access to the abundance that you talk about. I just think it's important to understand the rate of change in some of these systems is not linear. And so we're seeing, like, for example, last year in the US, the vast majority of that generation on the electric grid being clean.
I agree, Senator. Thank you, and I appreciate your passion for numbers and energy as well. Thank you for the good comments.
We need more data, guys.
Senator Murkowski.